The sea was restless that night, its waves clawing at the cliffs below the temple like hands desperate to reclaim what was theirs. I stood on the balcony, my bare feet cold against the polished marble, my robes heavy with the salt of the air. The city of Atlantis stretched before me, its spires of crystal catching the moonlight, their glow pulsing like the heartbeat of a god. I was Thalassa, priestess of the oracle, keeper of the sacred flame, and I had always believed our city was eternal, a jewel forged by the hands of the divine. But tonight, the air carried a weight I could not name, a tremor, a whisper, a warning that the world I knew was slipping away. The stars above were dim, veiled by clouds that moved too swiftly, and the sea's song was no longer a lullaby but a lament. I pressed my hands to the balustrade, the stone smooth and cool, worn by centuries of prayers offered to the gods of wave and sky. My mother had stood here once, her voice steady as she taught me the chants, her eyes bright with the certainty of our purpose. "We were the guardians of Atlantis," she said, "chosen to tend the flame that bound our people to the divine." I had believed her, believed in the gods, in the harmony of our city, in the wisdom of our council. But now, as I looked out over the city, I saw shadows where there should have been light torches flickering in the streets below. Voices raised in argument, the distant clatter of bronze against stone. Something was wrong, and I felt it in my chest, a tightening, like a thread pulled too taut. I turned from the balcony and entered the temple, the air inside cool and heavy with the scent of myrrh. The sacred flame burned at the center of the chamber, its light dancing on the walls, casting shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. I knelt before it, my knees sinking into the woven mat, and closed my eyes. The chants came to me, ancient and familiar, their words a river carrying me back to the time when Atlantis was young, when the gods walked among us, by fire and tide, by star and stone. We hold the balance, we guard the throne. I sang softly, my voice trembling, not from fear but from the weight of what I carried, the stories, the secrets, the truths no one else would speak. The council had met that morning, their voices sharp behind closed doors. I had not been invited, though I was priestess, though I spoke for the oracle. They said it was a matter of trade, of ships lost to storms, of alliances with the mainland. But I had seen their faces as they left, their eyes avoiding mine, their hands clutching scrolls sealed with wax. My brother, Arion, was among them, his jaw tight, his shoulders rigid, as if he carried a burden too heavy for one man. He had always been ambitious, dreaming of a greater Atlantis, a city that would rival the heavens. I had loved him for it, for his fire, his vision. But now I wondered what he had promised, what he had traded, to make his dreams real. I rose, my robes whispering against the floor, and approached the flame. Its heat kissed my skin, a reminder of its power, its hunger. The oracle had spoken to me only once, years ago, its voice a storm in my mind, its words a riddle I had never unraveled. When the heart of the city breaks, the sea will rise. I had thought it a metaphor, a warning against division, against pride. But now, as I stared into the flame, I saw something else, visions of water, endless and dark, swallowing the spires, the streets, the lives I had sworn to protect. I stepped back, my breath catching, my hands trembling. The gods were speaking, but I did not know if they offered salvation or judgment. Outside, the city was alive, its people unaware of the shadow creeping closer. I walked through the streets, my hood drawn to shield my face, my steps silent on the cobblestones. The market was a riot of color and sound, merchants calling out, children laughing, the clink of coins and the scent of roasted fish. I passed a woman selling shells, her fingers deft as she wove them into necklaces, her eyes crinkled with a smile. I wanted to warn her, to tell her to take her children and flee to the hills. But what could I say? That the gods were angry, that the council had betrayed us. I had no proof, only the ache in my heart, the echo of the oracle's words. I reached the harbor, where the ships rocked gently in their berths, their sails furled like sleeping birds. The sea was calmer here, its surface a mirror reflecting the city's lights. I knelt at the edge of the dock, my fingers trailing in the water, cold and sharp against my skin. I thought of my father, a sailor who had loved the sea more than the land, who had taught me to read the currents, to listen to the wind. He had died in a storm, his ship lost, his body claimed by the waves. I had mourned him, but I had also envied him, for he had become part of the sea, part of something greater than himself. Now, as I looked out at the horizon, I wondered if the sea would claim us all. A cry broke the silence, sharp and desperate, from the direction of the council hall. I stood, my heart racing, and ran toward the sound. The streets were crowded now, people pushing past me, their faces pale, their voices a chorus of fear. I saw a man carrying a child, her small arms wrapped around his neck, her eyes wide with terror. I wanted to stop, to comfort her, but I kept moving, drawn to the hall, to the truth I feared to find. The doors were open, the guards gone, and inside, the air was thick with the scent of blood. I stepped over a body, one of the counselors, his throat cut, his eyes staring at nothing. I stifled a cry, my hands pressed to my mouth, and moved deeper into the chamber. Arion was there, standing at the center, his sword drawn, his face a mask of rage and grief. Around him, the other counselors lay dead, their robes stained red, their scrolls scattered like leaves. I called his name, my voice breaking, and he turned, his eyes meeting mine. For a moment, I saw the boy I had known, the brother who had carved me a wooden boat, who had promised to protect me. But then he spoke, his voice cold, final. It is done. Thalassa. The old ways are gone. I stepped toward him, my hands outstretched. But he raised his sword, not to strike, but to warn. Go back to your temple, he said. This is no place for you. I left the hall, my feet heavy, my mind a storm. The city was no longer mine, no longer ours. I walked back to the temple, the streets now silent, the people hidden in their homes, waiting for a dawn that might never come. I climbed the steps, my breath ragged, and stood before the flame once more. It burned brighter now, as if fed by the chaos below, as if it knew what was coming. I knelt, my tears falling to the stone, and whispered a prayer, not for salvation, but for forgiveness. If we have failed you, I said, if we have broken the balance, let the sea be gentle. But the sea was not gentle, and as the first tremor shook the earth, I knew Atlantis was lost. The earth shook again, a low growl that rose from the depths, as if the bones of Atlantis itself were breaking. I stood before the sacred flame, its light flickering wildly now, casting shadows that danced like spirits freed from their chains. My hands were still wet with tears, my heart heavy with the image of Arion's sword, his eyes cold as the sea that surrounded us. The temple was silent, save for the faint hum of the flame and the distant cries from the city below. I wanted to run back to the council hall, to drag my brother from the darkness he had chosen, to make him see what he had done. But the tremor held me still, rooting me to the stone, as if the gods themselves commanded me to stay, to bear witness. I was Thalassa, priestess of the oracle, and though my city was fracturing, I could not abandon the flame. I stepped closer to the fire, its heat a sharp kiss against my skin, and closed my eyes. The chants rose unbidden, their rhythm steadying my breath, anchoring me to the ancient truths. By wave and star, by blood and bone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. The words were older than the temple, older than the city, woven into the very fabric of our being. They spoke of balance, of the pact between Atlantis and the gods, a promise we had kept for generations. But now, that promise was unraveling, torn by ambition, by greed, by the hands of men who thought they could rival the divine. I saw Arion's face again, not as he was in the hall, but as a boy, running through the fields with me, his laughter bright as the sun on the sea. How had we come to this? How had my brother, my blood, become the blade that cut us apart? The temple doors creaked open, and I turned, my heart leaping with the flicker of hope. Perhaps it was a supplicant, a child seeking shelter, a soul I could save. But it was Calus, the old scribe, his robes tattered, his hands trembling as he clutched a bundle of scrolls. His eyes, once sharp with wisdom, were wide with fear, his breath ragged as he stumbled toward me. "Thalassa," he gasped. "They have betrayed us all." I caught him as he fell, his weight slight but heavy with despair, and eased him to the floor. His hands gripped mine, his fingers cold, and he pressed a scroll into my palm. "The council," he said, his voice a whisper. "They made a pact with the Iron Lords. They offered the heart of Atlantis, the crystal, the flame for power." I stared at the scroll, its wax seal broken, its edges singed as if it had been pulled from fire. The heart of Atlantis, the crystal, hidden deep beneath the temple, was said to be a gift from the gods, a shard of their light that powered our city, that kept the sea at bay. I had never seen it, but I had felt its pulse, a rhythm that matched the flame, that matched my own heartbeat. To give it to the Iron Lord's invaders who worshipped only iron and blood was to give away our soul. I looked at Calus, his face pale, his breath shallow. "Why?" I asked. Though I feared the answer, he coughed, a wet, broken sound, and said, "Arion believed he could control them. He believed he could rule." I helped Calus to a bench, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. I unrolled the scroll. Its script hurried, the ink smudged with sweat or tears. It spoke of a bargain, of promises made in secret, of a plan to surrender the crystal in exchange for wealth, for ships, for an empire that would stretch beyond the sea. Arion's name was there, scrawled in his own hand, alongside the sigils of the Iron Lords. I felt the air leave me, as if the temple itself had exhaled. My brother, my protector, had sold us to wolves. I wanted to scream, to tear the scroll, to run to him and demand he undo what he had done. But Calus's hand tightened on mine, his eyes pleading. "You must go to the crystal," he said. "You must protect it. The flame will guide you." I left him there, promising to return, though I knew it was a lie. The temple was no longer safe, and neither was the city. I moved through the corridors, my steps quick, my robes brushing the stone like whispers. The flame's light seemed to follow me, its glow spilling through the arches, guiding me to a door I had never opened, a door carved with symbols older than memory. I pressed my hand to it, feeling a hum beneath my palm. a pulse that matched the one in my veins. The door gave way, revealing a spiral stair descending into darkness. The air cool and damp, scented with salt and stone. I hesitated, my breath catching, but the flame's light flickered behind me, urging me forward. I descended, the stairs slick underfoot, the walls closing in like the jaws of the sea. The chamber below was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor a mosaic of shells and stars. At its center stood the crystal, taller than a man, its surface alive with light, shifting from blue to gold to green, like the sea under a changing sky. I approached it, my heart pounding, my hands outstretched as if to touch a god. Its light warmed me, filled me, as if it knew my name, my purpose. I knelt before it, my tears falling to the stone, and whispered the chant of balance, the chant of protection. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. The crystal pulsed, its light flaring, and for a moment I felt whole, as if Atlantis could be saved, as if I could undo the betrayal. But then the earth shook again, harder this time, a roar that split the air and sent dust raining from the ceiling. I stood, clutching the crystal's light in my heart, and ran back to the stairs. The temple was trembling now, its walls groaning, its flame flickering as if it too feared the end. I reached the main chamber, where Calus lay still, his eyes closed, his scrolls scattered like leaves. I wanted to mourn him, to sing the chant for the dead, but there was no time. The city was screaming, the air thick with smoke and salt, the sea's voice rising above it all. I ran to the balcony, my breath ragged, and looked out over Atlantis. The spires were crumbling, the streets flooding, the people running toward the hills, their voices a chorus of despair. I saw Arion then, standing at the edge of the harbor, his sword still in hand, his figure small against the rising waves. I called to him, my voice lost in the wind, but he did not turn. The sea was coming, its waves towering, their crests white with fury. I knew then what the oracle had meant, what the gods had warned. The heart of Atlantis was broken, not by the Iron Lords, but by us, by our pride, our greed, our failure to hold the balance. I turned back to the flame, its light dim now, its heat fading. I knelt once more, my hands pressed to the stone, and whispered a final prayer. Forgive us, I said, and let us be remembered. The sea roared, the earth split, and the light went out. The darkness was absolute, a void that swallowed sound and sight, as if the gods had turned their faces away. I knelt where the sacred flame had burned, my hands pressed to the cold stone, searching for a spark, a whisper, anything to tell me Atlantis was not yet lost. The temple trembled around me, its walls groaning like a beast in pain, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and ruin. The flame was gone, extinguished for the first time in 1,000 years, and with it the pulse of the city seemed to falter. I was Thalassa, priestess of the oracle, keeper of the light, and I had failed. The sea was rising, the earth was breaking, and my brother's betrayal had torn the heart from our world. Yet I could not stay here, mourning what was lost. The crystal still called, its light a faint echo in my blood, urging me to move, to fight, to remember. I stood, my legs unsteady, my robes damp with the mist that seeped through the cracked walls. The temple was no longer a sanctuary, its arches sagging, its mosaic splintered like the dreams of our people. I stumbled toward the balcony, my hands brushing the stone for balance, and looked out over Atlantis. The city was a wound, its spires toppling, its streets swallowed by waves that surged with a hunger I could not fathom. The harbor was gone, the ships splintered, their masts jutting from the water like the bones of a forgotten beast. I saw figures running, their silhouettes faint against the glow of fires that burned despite the flood. A child's cry pierced the chaos, sharp and fleeting, and I felt it like a blade in my chest. I wanted to run to them, to gather them in my arms, to promise them safety, but there was no safety. Not anymore. I turned back to the temple, my breath shallow, my heart a drumbeat in my ears. The crystal was below, in the chamber where I had felt its light, its truth. If there was hope, it was there. In the heart of Atlantis, in the gift of the gods. I moved through the corridors, the air growing heavier, the walls slick with seawater that trickled like tears. The spiral stair was still there, its steps cracked but intact. Descending into the dark, I took a torch from the wall, its flame weak but enough to light my way, and began the descent. Each step was a prayer, each breath a vow. I would not let the crystal fall to the Iron Lords, to Arion, to the greed that had brought us to this edge. The gods had chosen me, or perhaps I had chosen myself. But either way, I would not falter. The chamber was as I had left it, the crystal standing at its center, its light dim but alive, pulsing like a heart that refused to stop. I approached it, my torch casting shadows that danced across the mosaic floor, their patterns shifting like the tides. The crystal's surface was warm, its glow wrapping around me, filling the hollow places in my soul. I pressed my hands to it, feeling its rhythm, its strength. And for a moment, I was not alone. I saw my mother's face, her eyes gentle, her voice singing the chants of old. I saw my father, his hands calloused from the sea, his smile bright as he taught me the stars. I saw Kalis, his scrolls scattered, his wisdom silenced, and I saw Arion, not as he was now, but as he had been, my brother, my friend. Before ambition claimed him, the earth shook again, a violent shudder that sent me to my knees, my torch rolling across the floor, its flame snuffed out. The crystal's light flared bright enough to blind, and I heard a voice, not the oracle's, but something older, deeper, like the sea itself speaking my name. Thalassa, it said. The balance is broken, but the light remains. I crawled toward the crystal, my hands scraping the stone, my tears falling like offerings. What must I do? I whispered. Though I feared the answer, the voice was silent. But the crystal pulsed, its light steady. And I knew then that my task was not to save Atlantis, but to save its soul, to carry its truth beyond the waves, beyond the ruin. I stood, my resolve hardening, and searched the chamber for anything that could help me. Against the wall, half hidden by shadow, was a chest of carved ebony, its surface etched with the symbols of the gods. I opened it, my hands trembling, and found a cloak of deep blue, woven with threads that shimmered like starlight, and a small vial of liquid that glowed faintly, like the crystal's light distilled. I draped the cloak over my shoulders, its weight comforting, and tucked the vial into my robes. There was no time to wonder what they were for, no time to question the god's intent. The chamber was flooding now, water seeping through the walls, pooling at my feet, cold and relentless. I took one last look at the crystal, its light a beacon in the dark, and ran for the stairs. The temple was collapsing, its walls buckling, its ceiling raining dust and stone. I reached the main chamber, my breath ragged, my torch gone. Guided only by memory and the faint glow of the vial in my robes, the balcony was still there, though the balustrade had crumbled, and I stepped out into the night. The sea was closer now, its waves lapping at the temple steps, its roar drowning out the cries of the city. I saw no one, no runners, no children, no Arion. The city was empty, or perhaps the sea had already claimed them all. I felt a sob rise in my throat, but I swallowed it, my hands gripping the cloak, my heart clinging to the crystal's light. I descended the temple steps, the water rising to my knees, its cold biting through my robes. The streets were rivers now, the cobblestones slick, the houses dark and silent. I moved toward the hills, where the people had fled, where there might still be hope. The cloak kept me warm, its threads glowing faintly, as if the stars themselves had woven it. The vial pressed against my chest, its light a reminder of the crystal, of the task I carried. I thought of the chants, of the stories, of the generations who had lived and died in Atlantis, who had believed in its eternity. I would not let their voices be silenced, not let their light be lost. I reached the edge of the city, where the hills began, their slopes dark with trees and shadow. The sea was behind me, its waves towering, its hunger insatiable. I turned, my breath catching, and saw the last of Atlantis vanish, a spire falling, a light winking out, a city swallowed whole. I fell to my knees, the earth soft beneath me, and wept, not for the city, but for the people, for the dreams, for the brother I had lost. The cloak wrapped around me, the vial glowed, and I knew I could not stay here. The gods had spared me, not for mercy, but for purpose. I stood, my tears drying, and walked into the hills, carrying the light of Atlantis, carrying its truth, carrying its end. The hills were quiet, the air cool, the stars hidden by clouds that promised rain. I walked until dawn, my feet finding paths I did not know, my heart guided by something greater than myself. I found a cave, its entrance hidden by vines, its walls smooth and dry. I entered, the cloak trailing behind me, the vial's light casting shadows that seemed to bow. I sat, my back against the stone, and opened the vial. Its light spilled out, bright as the crystal, bright as the flame. And I knew then what I must do. I would sing the chants, tell the stories, keep the light alive. Atlantis was gone, but I was not. I was Thalassa, and I would carry its memory until the sea itself was silent. The cave was a womb of stone, its walls cool and smooth, cradling me as I sat with the vial's light spilling across my hands. The glow was soft, like moonlight on water, and it warmed me, though the air was damp and heavy with the scent of earth and moss. I was Thalassa, priestess of a city that no longer existed, keeper of a flame that had gone dark. And yet I lived, my heart beating against the silence, my breath a defiant pulse in the dark. The sea's roar was faint now, muffled by the hills, but I could still feel its hunger, its anger, as if it sought me even here. Atlantis was gone, swallowed by waves that had no mercy, and I was alone, carrying a light I did not fully understand, a truth I was not sure I could bear. I held the vial closer, its glow casting shadows that flickered like memories on the cave walls. I saw my mother's hands, weaving herbs into salves, her voice humming the chants of balance. I saw my father's smile, his eyes crinkled against the sun as he pointed to the horizon, promising me the sea would always bring him home. I saw Arion, my brother, his laughter bright as we chased each other through the fields. Before the council, before the iron lords, before the betrayal that broke us all, the memories were sharp, cutting, and I pressed the vial to my chest, as if its light could heal the wound of their loss. But the light was not for healing. Not yet. It was for remembering, for carrying forward what Atlantis had been, what it could still mean. I stood, my legs aching from the climb, my robes heavy with the damp of the caves. The cloak of starlight thread shimmered faintly, its way to comfort, a reminder that I was not entirely alone. The gods had spared me, or perhaps they had cursed me. But either way, I had a purpose. I moved deeper into the cave, the vial's light guiding my steps, illuminating a path that wound through stone and shadow. The air grew colder, the walls narrowing, and I felt a presence, not human, not divine, but something ancient, woven into the earth itself. The cave was old, older than Atlantis, older than the stories I carried, and I wondered if it had seen other cities fall, other lights go dark. The path opened into a chamber, its ceiling studded with crystals that caught the vial's light and sent it dancing in 1,000 directions. I stopped, my breath catching, my heart swelling with a quiet awe. It was as if the stars had fallen into the earth, their glow a mirror of the sky I could no longer see. I knelt, the stone hard beneath me, and set the vial before me. Its light pulsed, steady and sure, and I began to sing. My voice soft at first, then rising, filling the chamber with the chants of my people. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. The words echoed, blending with the hum of the crystals, and for a moment I felt Atlantis alive again, its heart beating in my voice, its soul carried in my song. The earth trembled, a faint shudder that stirred the dust and made the crystals quiver. I stopped singing, my hands gripping the vial, my eyes searching the shadows. The sea was far now, but its reach was long, and I knew it would not rest until it had claimed all that remained of us. I thought of the people who had fled to the hills, their faces pale with fear, their arms heavy with what little they could carry. Had they found safety? Had they found each other? I wanted to believe they had, that somewhere in these hills a remnant of Atlantis endured, clinging to hope as I clung to the light. But hope was fragile, and I was only one woman, with no sword, no crown, only a vial and a cloak and the stories I carried. I rose, tucking the vial into my robes, and moved through the chamber, my fingers brushing the crystals as I passed. They were warm, alive, their light a faint echo of the great crystal beneath the temple. I wondered if they were kin, if they too were gifts of the gods, hidden here to wait for someone like me. I found a narrow passage, its walls carved with symbols I could not read, their lines worn by time but sharp with meaning. I followed it, the vial's light my only guide. until I emerged into a clearing, the night sky open above me, the stars bright and unclouded. The air was cool, scented with pine and earth, and I breathed it in, my chest aching with the freedom of it, the loss of it. The hills stretched before me, dark and silent, their slopes dotted with the faint glow of campfires, perhaps where survivors huddled, whispering prayers, clinging to each other. I wanted to go to them, to offer the vial's light, to sing the chants that might ease their fear. But I felt the weight of my task. The crystal's call, the god's command. I was not meant to comfort, not yet. I was meant to carry the light, to keep the truth alive, to ensure Atlantis was not forgotten. I knelt in the clearing, my hands pressed to the earth, and whispered a vow, not to the gods, but to my people, to the children I would never know. I will carry you, I said, through shadow and storm, through time and tide. The stars watched, silent and eternal, as I stood and began to walk. The cloak glowed faintly, its threads catching the starlight, guiding my steps through the hills. I moved toward the fires, my heart torn between duty and desire. I thought of Arion, wondering if he had survived, if he stood among the survivors, or if the sea had claimed him as it had claimed our city. I wanted to hate him, to curse his name, but I could not. He was my brother, my blood, and his betrayal was a wound we shared. I wondered if he had known, when he made his pact with the Iron Lords, that it would end like this, that the sea would rise, that the gods would judge us. I wondered if he had regretted it. In the end, I reached the first fire, its glow warm against the night, its smoke curling like a prayer. A small group sat around it, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. A woman held a child, her arms tight around him, her voice soft as she hummed a lullaby. A man sharpened a spear, his hand steady, his gaze distant. They looked up as I approached, their eyes wary, then softening as they saw my cloak, my face. "Priestess," the woman whispered, her voice breaking, and I knelt beside her, my hand resting on hers. "The gods have not forsaken us," I said, though the words felt heavy, uncertain. I opened the vial, its light spilling out, and their faces glowed, not with hope, but with something closer to peace. I stayed with them until dawn, singing the chants, telling the stories of Atlantis, its spires, its songs, its dreams. The child slept, the woman wept, the man listened, and I felt the light of the vial grow stronger, as if it fed on their presence, their survival. The sea was silent now, its waves spent, its hunger sated. But I knew it was not over. Not yet. The Iron Lords were still out there, their ships waiting beyond the horizon. their hunger for the crystal unquenched. I stood, the cloak wrapping around me, and looked to the east, where the sun was rising, its light pale but fierce. Atlantis was gone, but I was not. I was Thalassa, and I would carry its light until the stars themselves went dark. The dawn broke over the hills, its light thin and sharp, like a blade slicing through the remnants of the night. I stood among the survivors, their faces warmed by the small fire, their eyes heavy with grief but alive with something fiercer defiance, perhaps, or the stubborn will to endure. The child in the woman's arms stirred, his small hand reaching for the vial's glow, its light casting a soft halo around his face. I was Thalassa, priestess of a fallen city, bearer of a light I barely understood. And yet these people looked to me as if I held the answers, as if I could mend what the sea had broken. My cloak of starlight thread shimmered faintly, its glow a quiet promise. But my heart was heavy, weighed by the truth I carried. Atlantis was gone, and the Iron Lords were coming. I knelt beside the woman. Her name, Mira, whispered to me in the night as we shared stories of the city we had lost. Her hands were rough, calloused from weaving nets, her eyes deep with the kind of sorrow that comes from burying a child. She had lost another son to the waves. She told me, his small body swept away before she could reach him. I wanted to offer her words, to weave a chant that would ease her pain. But all I could do was hold her hand, my fingers tracing the lines of her palm, as if I could read her future, as if I could promise her peace. The vial's light pulsed between us, its warmth a reminder of the crystal, of the gods who had not yet abandoned us completely. The man with the spear, Tauren, stood at the edge of the fire's glow, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He had been a fisherman once, his hands skilled at mending nets, his voice known for its songs of the sea. Now, his hands gripped the spear as if it were his only anchor, his songs silenced by the weight of survival. "They'll come for us," he said, his voice low, steady, like the tide before a storm. I followed his gaze, my heart tightening as I saw the faint glint of metal in the distant ships, their sails black against the rising sun, their prows cutting through the mist like knives. The Iron Lords. They had not been content with Atlantis's fall. They wanted the crystal, the light, the soul of our city. I stood, my cloak brushing the earth, and moved to Tauren's side. "How many?" I asked, though I feared the answer. He squinted, his eyes narrowing as he counted the sails. 10, maybe more," he said. "Enough to hunt us down." I felt the vial against my chest, its light a quiet pulse, and I knew what they sought. The crystal's power was a legend, whispered in markets, sung in temples, a force that could bend the sea, the sky, the will of men. Arion had promised it to them. I realized, not just for wealth or power, but for something darker, something that made my blood run cold. I thought of his face, his eyes, the boy he had been, and I wondered if he was on those ships, leading the wolves to our door. Mira rose, the child clinging to her, and joined us, her gaze fierce despite her tears. "We cannot stay here," she said, her voice steady, a mother's strength forged in loss. I nodded, my mind racing, searching for a path, a plan, anything to keep the light safe. The hills were vast, their paths winding through forests and ravines. But they were not endless. The Iron Lords would find us, their hunger relentless, their blade sharp with purpose. I looked at the survivors, 5 in all, including the child, their faces worn but unbroken. They were not warriors, not kings, but they were Atlantis. As much as I was, as much as the crystal had been. I led them deeper into the hills, the vial's light guiding our steps, the cloak shielding us from the morning chill. The path was narrow, the earth soft with dew, the air thick with the scent of pine and fear. We moved in silence, save for the child's soft whimpers, Mira's whispers soothing him, Torin's spear tapping the ground like a heartbeat. I thought of the temple, its flame extinguished, its walls shattered, and I felt a pang of guilt for leaving it behind. But the temple was not the light, not the truth. The light was here, in the vial, in our steps, in the stories we carried. I sang softly, the chant of protection, my voice barely audible, a thread weaving us together, by fire and tide, by star and stone. We hold the light, we guard the throne. We walked until the sun was high, its heat pressing through the trees, its light revealing the scars of the night-uprooted trees, streams swollen with debris, earth cracked where the tremors had struck. I stopped at a clearing, where a spring bubbled, its water clear and cold, a gift from the earth. We drank, our hands cupped, our faces wet with gratitude. Mira washed the child's face, her hands gentle, her eyes distant, as if she saw her lost son in his features. Torin stood watch, his spear ready, his gaze sweeping the hills. I opened the vial, its light spilling out, and held it aloft, letting its glow fill the clearing. "This is Atlantis," I said, my voice steady, though my heart trembled. "This is what we carry." The survivors gathered around me, their faces lit by the vial's glow, their eyes searching mine for answers. I told them of the crystal, of its power, of the gods who had entrusted it to us. I told them of Arion's betrayal, my voice breaking as I spoke his name, and of the Iron Lords who hunted us now. They listened, their hands clasped, their breaths held, and I saw in their faces the weight of our shared loss, the strength of our shared purpose. "We are few," I said, "but we are enough. We will keep the light safe for those who come after us, for the world that will remember Atlantis." The earth trembled again, a low rumble that sent pebbles skittering down the slopes. Torrin pointed to the east, where the glint of metal was closer now. The sails of the Iron Lord's ships visible even from the hills. "They're landing," he said, his voice grim. I felt the vial pulse, its light flaring, as if it knew the danger, as if it urged us to move. I looked at Mira, at the child, at the others, their faces pale but resolute. "We go west," I said, "to the old groves, where the gods still listen." They nodded, their trust a weight I both cherished and feared. I tucked the vial into my robes, the cloak glowing faintly, and led them onward, into the shadow of the trees, into the unknown. The groves were a day's journey, their ancient trees said to be the firstborn of the gods, their roots deep enough to touch the heart of the earth. I had been there once, as a child, with my mother, her hand warm in mine as she taught me the names of the spirits who lived in the leaves. I had felt safe then, as if the world could never break. Now, as we walked, the memory was a ache, a reminder of all I had lost. The survivors followed, their steps heavy but steady, their silence a prayer. The child clung to Mira, his eyes wide, and I wondered what he would remember. If he would carry the light as I did, if he would sing the chants when I was gone. Night fell, the stars hidden by clouds, the air cool and heavy with the promise of rain. We stopped in a hollow, sheltered by rocks, and built a small fire, its glow a faint echo of the vial's light. I sang again, the chants of protection, of endurance, my voice weaving a shield around us. Mira hummed along, her voice soft, the child sleeping in her arms. Torrin sharpened his spear, his eyes never leaving the darkness. I held the vial, its light warm against my skin, and whispered a prayer, not for salvation, but for strength. The Iron Lords were close, their hunger a shadow on the horizon. But I was Thalassa, and I would not let the light fade, not while I still breathed. The forest closed around us, its ancient trees towering like sentinels, their branches woven so tightly that only slivers of moonlight pierced the canopy. I led the survivors through the undergrowth, my cloak of starlight threads glowing faintly, a beacon in the dark. The vial pulsed against my chest, its light a steady heartbeat, urging me onward, toward the groves where the gods were said to linger. I was Thalassa, priestess of a vanished city, keeper of a light that burned brighter than my fear, and yet my steps faltered, weighed by the knowledge that the Iron Lords were close, their ships no longer on the horizon but anchored, Their boots now treading the earth we fled across. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. But beneath it, I caught the faint tang of smoke, a reminder that nothing was safe, not even here. Mira walked behind me, her child, Lear, clinging to her, his small face buried in her shoulder. Her steps were steady, her breath even, but I saw the strain in her eyes, the weight of loss that clung to her like a shadow. Torin flanked us, his spear gripped tightly, his gaze sweeping the darkness, every rustle of leaves sharpening his stance. The other two survivors, an old woman named Syria and a young man named Kalen, followed in silence, their hands clasped as if to anchor each other. We were few, fragile, but we were Atlantis, and the light I carried was ours, a thread connecting us to the city that had birthed us, to the gods who had shaped us. I sang softly, the chant of endurance, my voice a whisper against the night. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. The path grew steeper, the earth slick with moss, the trees older, their trunks gnarled and wide, as if they had seen the birth of the world. I felt their presence, a quiet strength that steadied my heart. And I remembered my mother's stories of the groves, where the first priests had spoken with the gods, where the earth and sky were one. She had brought me here once, her hand warm in mine, her voice soft as she named the spirits in the leaves. I had been a child then, unafraid, believing Atlantis would stand forever. Now, as I led my people through the dark, I felt her absence like a wound, her wisdom a light I could not reach. The vial pulsed, its glow spilling through my robes, and I clung to it, as if it could carry her voice, her strength, her love. A cry broke the silence, sharp and human, from somewhere behind us. Torin stopped, his spear raised, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the trees. "They're close," he whispered, his voice low but urgent. I felt the vial flare, its light hot against my skin, as if it sensed the danger, as if it knew what hunted us. The Iron Lords were relentless, their hunger for the crystal a fire that would burn through the hills, through us, through everything we held dear. I thought of Arion, my brother, his betrayal a blade in my heart. Was he with them, leading their hunt, his ambition now a chain around his soul? I wanted to believe he was dead, claimed by the sea, but I knew him too well. He was alive, and he would not stop until the crystal was his. I gathered the survivors, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "We must reach the groves," I said, my hands gripping the vial, its light spilling between my fingers. "The gods will guide us." Mira nodded, her eyes fierce, her child's small hand clutching her robe. Syria leaned on Calin, her breath ragged but her gaze resolute, as if she carried the strength of all her years. Torin met my eyes, his spear a silent vow, and I felt a surge of gratitude, of love for these people who followed me, who trusted me, though I was no queen, no warrior, only a priestess with a light and a prayer. We moved faster, the trees blurring, the earth soft beneath our feet, the chant rising in my throat like a tide. The groves were close now, their air different, heavier, as if the gods themselves breathed here. I saw the first of the sacred trees, their trunks white as bone, their leaves shimmering like silver in the moonlight. I stopped, my heart swelling with awe, with relief, and knelt, my hands pressed to the earth. The vial's light flared, bright enough to cast shadows, and I felt a hum, not from the earth but from within, as if the gods were listening, as if they had not yet forsaken us. I sang the chant of protection, my voice stronger now, weaving a shield around us, around the light, around the hope we carried. The survivors knelt beside me, their hands touching the earth, their breaths mingling with mine, and for a moment we were one, bound by loss, by love, by the light of Atlantis. But the moment shattered, a horn's blast cutting through the night, low and mournful, like the cry of a wounded beast. Torin stood, his spear ready, his eyes fixed on the path we had taken. "They've found us," he said, his voice grim. I rose, the vial tucked into my robes, the cloak glowing faintly, and looked to the survivors. "Stay close," I said, my voice a command, a plea. We moved into the groves, the trees closing around us, their branches a canopy of silver and shadow. The air was cool, scented with sap and earth, and I felt the gods' presence, faint but real, a whisper in my blood. I led us deeper, the vial's light guiding my steps, the chant a rhythm in my heart. We reached the heart of the groves, a clearing where a single tree stood, its trunk wider than a temple, its branches heavy with leaves that glowed like stars. I stopped, my breath catching, my hands trembling as I approached it. This was the tree of beginnings, the first gift of the gods, its roots said to touch the heart of the earth, its leaves to hold the secrets of the sky. I knelt before it, the vial in my hands, its light merging with the tree's glow, and I prayed, not for salvation, but for guidance. "Show me the way," I whispered, my tears falling to the earth. "Show me how to keep the light alive." The earth trembled, not with the violence of before, but with a gentle pulse, as if the tree itself answered. I felt a warmth, not from the vial, but from within, and I saw a vision not of Atlantis, but of a world beyond, a world where the light would live where the stories would endure. I stood, the survivors gathering around me, their faces lit by the tree's glow, their eyes wide with wonder. I opened the vial, its light spilling out, and held it to the tree, letting its glow merge with the leaves, with the roots, with the earth. "This is Atlantis," I said, my voice breaking, "and it will not be forgotten." The horn sounded again, closer now, joined by the clatter of armor, the crunch of boots on earth. Tauren raised his spear, Mira clutched Lear. Saria and Kalen stood together, their hands clasped. I tucked the vial into my robes, the cloak wrapping around me, and faced the path, my heart steady, my resolve unbroken. The Iron Lords emerged, their armor black as the void, their swords gleaming in the moonlight. At their head was Arion, his face pale, his eyes dark with a hunger I did not recognize. "Thalassa," he said, his voice a blade, "give me the light." I stepped forward, the vial's pulse a fire in my chest, and answered, my voice clear, my spirit unyielding. "You cannot have what belongs to the gods." The groves hummed, the tree glowed, and I knew, whatever came next, the light would endure. The groves pulsed with a quiet power, the tree of beginnings glowing like a star brought to earth, its leaves shimmering with a light that seemed to breathe. I stood before it, the vial warm against my chest, my cloak of starlight threads catching the glow, as if the gods themselves had woven it to shield me. Arion faced me, his sword drawn, its blade catching the moonlight, his eyes dark with a hunger that was no longer his own. The Iron Lords flanked him, their armor black as the void, their faces hidden behind helms that gleamed like the eyes of wolves. I was Thalassa, priestess of Atlantis, keeper of the light. And though my heart trembled at the sight of my brother, my voice was steady, my spirit unbroken. "You cannot have what belongs to the gods," I said again. The words a vow, a challenge, a prayer. Behind me, the survivors stood Mira, clutching Lear, her eyes fierce with a mother's love. Tauren, his spear raised, his stance unwavering. Saria and Kalen, their hands clasped, their faces lit by the tree's glow. We were few, but we were Atlantis, the last of its heart, its soul, its truth. The air was thick with the scent of sap and earth, the night cool against my skin, but the vial's pulse was a fire in my blood, urging me to stand, to fight, to hold the light against the darkness that had come for us. Arion took a step forward, his sword lowered but his gaze unyielding. "Thalassa," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading, "give me the vial, and I will spare them. I will spare you." I felt the words like a blow. his voice stirring memories of the boy he had been running through the fields, carving a wooden boat, promising to protect me. But that boy was gone, drowned in ambition, in promises made to men who worshipped iron over gods. I looked into his eyes, searching for a flicker of the brother I loved. But all I saw was shadow, a man consumed by a dream that had become a curse. "You spared nothing?" I said, my voice low. "Cutting. You gave Atlantis to the sea, to these wolves. You betrayed us all." His face twitched, a flash of pain, of guilt. But then it hardened, and he raised his sword, the Iron Lords stepping closer, their blades glinting like teeth. The groves seemed to hold their breath, the trees silent, the stars hidden by clouds that churned above. I felt the vial pulse, its light spilling through my robes, and I stepped back, closer to the tree of beginnings, its glow wrapping around me like a mother's arms. "You seek the crystal's power," I said, my voice rising, carrying the weight of the chants, of the stories, of the gods. "But it is not yours to take. It is Atlantis, and it will not bend to you." Arian's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening on his sword, and I saw the moment he chose the Iron Lords, chose power, chose the end of us. He lunged, his blade aimed at my heart. But Tauren was faster, his spear blocking the blow, the clash of metal ringing through the groves. The survivors moved, Mira pulling Lear behind the tree, Saria and Kalen pressing against its trunk, their hands touching its bark as if to draw its strength. I clutched the vial, its light flaring, and sang the chant of protection, my voice a tide against the chaos. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light. We guard the throne. The words wove a shield, not of stone or iron, but of will, of faith, of the love that had bound Atlantis for centuries. The Iron Lords advanced, their blades drawn, their steps heavy on the earth. But the groves answered, the trees trembling, their roots stirring beneath us, as if the gods themselves stirred in their sleep. Tauren fought with a fisherman's strength, his spear a blur, holding Arion at bay. I saw blood on his arm, a shallow cut, but he did not falter, his eyes fierce, his heart aflame. I wanted to help him, to stand beside him, but my place was here, with the vial, with the tree, with the light that was our last hope. I knelt, pressing the vial to the tree's roots, its glow merging with the earth, with the leaves, with the air itself. The light flared, bright enough to blind, and the Iron Lords hesitated, their helms reflecting the glow, their swords lowering for a moment. Arion shouted, his voice raw, "Take it! Take the light!" But the groves roared, a wind rising from nowhere, whipping through the trees, carrying the scent of salt and storm. I sang louder, my voice breaking but unyielding. The chant a thread that bound us to the gods, to the earth, to each other. Mira joined me, her voice soft but steady, her child's small hand clutching her robe. Saria and Kalen sang too, their voices frail but fierce, a chorus that rose above the clash of blades, above the cries of the Iron Lords. The tree glowed brighter, its light a pulse that matched the vial, matched my heart, matched the soul of Atlantis. I felt a presence, not the gods, but something deeper, older, the spirit of the city itself, rising through the roots, through the leaves, through us. The earth trembled, not with destruction, but with life, with defiance, with a power that no sword could cut. Arion struck again, his sword grazing Tauren's side, and I cried out, my voice lost in the wind. Tauren stumbled but did not fall, his spear striking back, forcing Arion to retreat. The Iron Lords pressed forward, their numbers overwhelming, their blades a wall of iron. I stood, the vial in my hands, its light a fire that burned through my fear. You will not have it, I said, my voice clear, my eyes locked on Arion's. You will not have Atlantis. I raised the vial, its light spilling out, and the tree answered, its branches swaying, its roots cracking the earth, sending the Iron Lords staggering. The groves were alive, their power a tide, their will a shield. Arion screamed, a sound of rage, of despair, and charged, his sword aimed at me. At the vial? At the light. I did not move, did not flinch. The vial's glow steady in my hands, the tree's light steady in my heart. Tauren threw himself between us, his spear breaking under Arion's blade, his body falling to the earth. I cried out, my voice a wail, but I held the vial, held the light, held the truth. Mira pulled me back, her arms strong, her child crying, and we retreated deeper into the groves, the tree's light following us, shielding us. The Iron Lords pursued, their boots heavy, their swords hungry, but the groves fought for us, the trees closing, the roots rising, the wind a howl that drowned their cries. We ran, the survivors together, the vial's light guiding us, the tree's glow fading behind us. I looked back, my heart breaking for Tauren, for the man who had given his life for us, for the light. Arion was there, his sword bloodied, his eyes wild. But the groves held him, their branches a cage, their roots a chain. I wanted to go to him, to save him, to bring back the brother I had loved. But Mira's hand tightened on mine, her voice a whisper. Keep going, Thalassa. Keep the light. I nodded, my tears falling. and ran, the vial pulsing, the cloak glowing, the chants alive in my throat. The groves were our sanctuary, our shield, but they could not hold forever. The Iron Lords would come, and I would be ready with the light, with the truth, with the soul of Atlantis. The groves were a labyrinth of shadow and silver, their ancient trees weaving a canopy that held the night at bay. I ran, the vial's light pulsing against my chest, its glow a lifeline in the dark. Mira clung to my side, her child Lear in her arms, his small face pale but silent, as if he understood the weight of our flight. Syria and Kalen followed, their steps faltering but steady, their hands clasped, their breaths a quiet rhythm against the chaos. The cloak of starlight threads shimmered around me, its glow faint but fierce, a reminder of the gods' presence, or perhaps their absence. I was Thalassa, priestess of a city lost to the sea, keeper of a light that burned brighter than my grief. And yet my heart was heavy with Tauren's fall, with Arion's betrayal, with the knowledge that the Iron Lords were close, their hunger a shadow that devoured the night. The air was thick with the scent of moss and resin, the earth soft beneath our feet, the trees whispering as if they mourned with us. I could still hear Tauren's cry, the clash of his spear against Arion's sword. The moment he fell to save me, to save the light, I wanted to stop, to kneel, to sing the chant for the dead. But there was no time, no space for grief. The Iron Lords were behind us, their boots crunching through the undergrowth, their armor clanking like the chains of fate. I glanced back, my eyes searching the darkness, half hoping to see Arion, to find a flicker of the brother I loved. But all I saw was shadow. All I heard was the horn's low wail, calling them to the hunt. Mira's hand tightened on mine, her voice a whisper, urgent and fierce. Keep going. Thalassa. For Lear. For us all. I nodded, my throat tight, my tears burning but unshed. The vial pulsed, its light spilling through my robes, guiding our steps deeper into the groves, where the trees grew older, their trunks twisted like the hands of ancients, their leaves glowing with a light that seemed to come from within. I felt the gods here, or perhaps the memory of them, their presence a hum in the earth, a warmth in the air. I sang softly, the chant of protection, my voice a thread weaving us together, shielding us from the fear that clawed at our hearts. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light. We guard the throne, the path narrowed, the trees closing in, their branches brushing my face like a mother's touch. I remembered my mother, her hands steady as she taught me the chants, her eyes bright with faith in Atlantis, in the gods, in me. She had believed in balance, in the harmony of sea and sky, earth and star. Now, as I ran, the vials light a fire in my hands. I wondered if she had known this day would come, if she had seen the shadow of betrayal, the rise of the sea. I wanted to ask her, to beg her for guidance, but she was gone, and I was here, carrying her songs, her strength, her love. The survivors followed. Their trust a weight I both cherished and feared, their steps a vow that we would not let Atlantis die. We reached a clearing, smaller than the last, its center marked by a stone altar, its surface worn smooth by centuries of offerings. I stopped, my breath ragged, my heart pounding as I approached it. The altar was carved with symbols, spirals, waves, stars, each one a story, a prayer, a promise. I knelt, the vial in my hands, its light spilling across the stone, illuminating the carvings, making them dance like the waves that had claimed our city. I felt a presence, not the gods, but something deeper, older, the spirit of Atlantis itself, woven into the earth, into the trees, into us. I pressed the vial to the altar, its glow merging with the stone, and whispered a prayer, not for salvation, but for strength. Let us carry you. I said, let us be enough. The survivors gathered around me, their faces lit by the vial's glow, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. Mira set Lear down, his small hands reaching for the light, his voice soft as he hummed a tune I recognized, a lullaby of the sea. One my mother had sung. Syria leaned against Kalan, her breath shallow, her hands trembling, but her gaze steady, as if she saw beyond the night, beyond the hunt. Kalan's eyes were fierce, his hand resting on the knife at his belt, a fisherman's tool-turned weapon. I looked at them, my people, my family, and felt a surge of love, of purpose. We were few, but we were Atlantis, and the light we carried was ours, a flame that no sea could drown, no sword could cut. The horn sounded again, closer now, its note sharp and hungry. I stood, tucking the vial into my robes, the cloak wrapping around me like a shield. We must move, I said, my voice steady, though my heart raced. The survivors nodded, their resolve a mirror of my own, and we pressed deeper into the groves, the trees guiding us, their roots a path through the dark. The air grew colder, the earth harder, the scent of salt faint but growing stronger, as if the sea followed us, its reach endless, its hunger unquenched. I thought of Arion, his face pale in the moonlight, his sword bloodied, his soul lost to the Iron Lords. I wanted to save him, to pull him back from the edge, but I knew he was gone as Atlantis, as gone as the flame. We reached a ravine, its walls steep, its floor a river that glittered under the stars. I stopped, my breath catching, the vial's light spilling across the water, turning it to silver. The survivors gathered behind me, their eyes searching the darkness, their hands ready, Mira with Lear, Syria with Kalen, their strength a quiet fire. I felt the vial pulse, its light urging me forward, but the ravine was a barrier, its waters swift, its banks slick with moss. I looked across, my eyes catching a faint glow. Not the vials, but something else, something older, deeper in the groves. There, I said, pointing, my voice a whisper. The gods are there. We crossed the river, our hands linked, the water cold and biting, pulling at our robes, our legs, our resolve. Lear clung to Mira, his small body trembling but silent, his eyes fixed on the vial's glow. Syria stumbled, but Kalen held her, his arms strong, his face set with determination. I led them, the cloak glowing, the vial pulsing, the chant alive in my throat. The other side was steep, the earth loose, but we climbed, our hands grasping roots, our feet finding stone. The glow grew brighter, a beacon in the dark, and I knew we were close, close to the heart of the groves, close to the gods, close to the truth. The horn sounded again, a scream now, splitting the night. I turned, my heart lurching, and saw them, the Iron Lords, their armor gleaming, their swords raised, emerging from the trees like shadows given form. Arion was not with them, and I felt a pang, not of relief but of loss, as if his absence confirmed his end. I raised the vial, its light flaring, and sang, my voice a tide, a shield, a sword, by fire and tide, by star and stone. We hold the light, we guard the throne. The survivors joined me, their voices rising, their hands linked, their hearts one. The Iron Lords hesitated, their blades lowering, their eyes blinded by the light. The groves answered, the trees swaying, the earth trembling. The gods awake. I stepped forward, the vial high, the cloak glowing, and faced them, not as a priestess, but as Atlantis itself, unyielding, eternal, alive. The groves were alive, their ancient trees trembling with a power that seemed to rise from the earth's heart, their leaves glowing like stars torn from the sky. I stood at the edge of the ravine, the vial raised high, its light a fire that burned through the darkness, through my fear, through the weight of all I had lost. The Iron Lords faced me, their armor black as the void, their swords gleaming with a hunger that matched the seas. Behind me, the survivors, Mira, clutching Lear, Syria. Leaning on Kalen sang with me, their voices weaving the chant of protection, a shield against the blades that sought to end us. I was Thalassa, priestess of Atlantis, keeper of the light. And though the world I knew was gone, I felt its soul in my blood, its truth in my voice, its will in my stand. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light. We guard the throne. The Iron Lords hesitated, their eyes blinded by the vial's glow, their steps faltering as the groves answered our song. The trees swayed, their roots cracking the earth, their branches whipping through the air like the arms of gods. The wind rose, sharp with the scent of salt and storm, carrying the echo of the sea that had claimed Atlantis, as if it fought with us now, as if it mourned what it had done. I felt the vial pulse, its light merging with the groves, with the survivors, with the spirit of our city. Mira's voice was steady, her hand tight around Lear's, her eyes fierce with a mother's love. Syria's voice was frail but unbroken, Kalen's strong beside her, their hands clasped, their hearts one. We were few, but we were enough, a remnant of Atlantis, a flame that no darkness could quench. The Iron Lords recovered, their leader a man with a scarred helm, his eyes cold as iron, raising his sword, his voice a growl that cut through the wind. "Give us the light, priestess, or we take it from your corpse." I did not flinch, did not lower the vial, its glow steady in my hands, its power a tide in my veins. "You cannot take what is not yours," I said, my voice clear, my spirit unyielding. "The light is Atlantis, and it will not bow." The groves roared, the earth trembling, the trees closing around us, their roots a barrier, their leaves a shield. The survivors sang louder, their voices a chorus that rose above the clash of armor, above the cries of the hunters, above the fear that clawed at my heart. The scarred leader charged, his sword aimed at me, his men following, their blades a wall of iron. I stepped back, the vial high, the cloak of starlight threads glowing like a beacon. The groves fought with us, the roots tripping the Iron Lords, the branches striking their helms, the wind blinding their eyes. Mira pulled Lear behind a tree, her body a shield, her voice never faltering. Syria and Kalen pressed against the altar, their hands touching the stone, their song a prayer that held us together. I sang with them, the chant of protection, of endurance, of defiance. My voice a tide that pushed back the darkness, that held the light against the storm. The Iron Lords were relentless, their numbers overwhelming, their blades cutting through the branches, their boots crushing the earth. I saw one fall, a root piercing his armor, his scream swallowed by the wind. Another stumbled, his sword caught in the trees, his helm torn away by the grove's wrath. But they kept coming, their hunger for the vial, for the crystal's power, a fire that burned through their fear. I felt the vial pulse, its light flaring. And I knew it was not just a relic, not just a gift of the gods, but the soul of Atlantis itself, a truth that could not be taken, only given. I stepped forward, the vial in one hand, the other raised, my voice a command. Stop! The scarred leader paused, his sword lowered, his eyes narrowing as he studied me, as if seeing me for the first time. The groves grew still, the wind softening, the trees waiting, as if they too held their breath. I felt the survivors behind me, their voices quiet now, their eyes on me, their trust a weight I carried with pride. The light is not yours to claim, I said, my voice steady, my heart fierce. It is ours, born of our songs, our dreams, our blood. You may kill us, but you will never hold it. The vial glowed brighter, its light spilling across the clearing, across the ravine, across the groves, a fire that burned with the spirit of Atlantis, with the love of its people, with the truth of its gods. The Iron Lords murmured, their blades wavering, their eyes darting to the trees, to the earth, to the light that defied them. The scarred leader stepped closer, his sword still raised, but his voice was softer now, almost curious. What are you? Priestess, he asked, his eyes locked on mine. What makes you stand when your city is gone? I felt the vial pulse, the cloak glow, the groves hum, and I answered, my voice a whisper that carried like a storm. I am Atlantis, and I am not alone. The survivors stepped forward, Mira with Lear, Saria with Kalen, their faces lit by the vial's glow, their eyes fierce with the strength of our city, our people, our gods. The earth trembled, not with destruction but with life, a pulse that rose through the roots, through the trees, through us. The vial flared, its light blinding, and the Iron Lords staggered, their swords falling, their helms reflecting a glow they could not bear. The scarred leader raised his hand, a signal to retreat. But then I saw him, Arion, emerging from the shadows, his sword bloodied, his face pale, his eyes wild with a hunger that broke my heart. Thalassa, he said, his voice raw. Give it to me. It's the only way. I shook my head, my tears falling, the vial steady in my hands. You chose the dark. Brother, I said, but I choose the light. Arion lunged, his sword aimed at the vial, at me, at the soul of Atlantis. I did not move, did not flinch. The vial's light a shield, the groves a fortress. Mira screamed, pulling Lear away. Syria and Kalen pressing against the altar, their voices rising in the chant. The trees answered, their branches striking Arion, their roots tripping him. their glow blinding him. He fell, his sword clattering to the earth, his hands reaching for the vial. For me, for the brother he had been. I knelt beside him, the vial's light spilling across his face, and whispered, my voice breaking, forgive me. The groves roared, the earth split, and the Iron Lords fled, their cries lost in the wind, their hunger broken by the light. We stood, the survivors and I, the vial glowing, the cloak shimmering, the groves silent but alive. Arion lay still, his eyes closed, his breath gone, and I wept, not for the man he had become, but for the boy he had been, for the brother I had loved. Mira touched my shoulder, her hand warm, her eyes gentle. Lear reached for the vial, his small fingers brushing its glow, his voice soft as he hummed the lullaby of the sea. Syria and Kaelin knelt beside the altar, their hands touching the stone, their prayers a quiet vow. I stood, the vial in my hands, the light of Atlantis alive, eternal, unyielding. The Iron Lords were gone, but the world was vast, and the light was ours to carry, ours to sing, ours to keep. I looked to the stars, now visible through the trees, and whispered, my voice a promise. We are Atlantis, and we will endure. The groves stood silent, their ancient trees bathed in the soft glow of dawn, their leaves shimmering like fragments of a forgotten sky. I knelt beside Arion's body, the vial's light spilling across his still face, its glow gentle now, as if it mourned with me. His eyes were closed, his hands empty, the hunger that had consumed him gone, leaving only the brother I had loved, the boy who had carved me a wooden boat, who had promised to protect me. I was Thalassa, priestess of Atlantis, keeper of the light. And though my heart was a wound, my spirit was unbroken. My purpose clear. The Iron Lords had fled, their blades no match for the groves, for the light, for the soul of Atlantis. But the world was vast, and the light was ours to carry, ours to sing, ours to keep. Mira stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, her child Lear clinging to her, his small face lit by the vial's glow. Syria and Kaelin knelt at the altar, their hands touching the stone, their eyes distant, as if they saw beyond the groves, beyond the dawn, to a world where Atlantis lived on. The air was cool, scented with pine and earth, the earth steady beneath us, the tremors gone, the sea silent at last. I rose, the cloak of starlight thread shimmering, the vial warm against my chest, and looked to the survivors, my people, my family. We were few, but we were enough. The last of Atlantis, the bearers of its truth, its love, its light. I sang softly. the chant of remembrance, my voice a thread weaving us together, binding us to the city we had lost. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. I touched Arion's face, my fingers brushing his cold skin, and whispered the chant for the dead, not for the man who had betrayed us, but for the boy who had been my brother. Go gently, child of the stars, to the place where shadows fade. My tears fell, not in anger but in love, in forgiveness, in the hope that he had found peace, that the gods had seen the boy beneath the shadow. I stood, the vial pulsing, the cloak glowing, and turned to the survivors. We cannot stay here, I said, my voice steady, though my heart ached. The light must live, and we must carry it. Mira nodded, her eyes fierce, her hand tight around Lear's. Syria and Kalen rose, their hands clasped, their resolve a mirror of my own. We moved through the groves, the trees guiding us, their branches parting like a mother's arms, their leaves glowing with a light that matched the vials. The path was gentle now, the earth soft, the air warm with the promise of a new day. I felt the gods, not as voices, but as a presence woven into the trees, into the earth, into us. I thought of my mother, her hands weaving herbs, her voice singing the chants of balance. I thought of my father, his smile bright against the sea, his hands teaching me the stars. I thought of Torin, his spear raised, his life given for the light. They were with me, their voices in the chant, their strength in the vial, their love in my heart. We reached the edge of the groves, where the hills open to a valley, its slopes green with life, its rivers silver under the rising sun. I stopped, my breath catching, the vial's light spilling across the earth, turning the grass to gold. The survivors gathered around me, their faces lit by the glow, their eyes wide with wonder, with hope. I opened the vial, its light flaring, and held it aloft, letting its glow fill the valley, fill the sky, fill the world. This is Atlantis, I said, my voice breaking, my heart soaring. This is our soul, our truth, our forever. Lear reached for the light, his small hand glowing, his voice humming the lullaby of the sea, a song that carried the memory of our city, our people, our gods. The valley was alive, its rivers singing, its trees swaying, its earth pulsing with the same rhythm as the vial, as the crystal, as my heart. I knelt, pressing the vial to the ground, its light sinking into the earth, merging with the roots, with the rivers, with the stars above. I felt a warmth, not from the vial, but from within, a vision of a world where Atlantis lived, not in stone or spire, but in stories, in songs, in the light we carried. I stood, the cloak wrapping around me, the survivors beside me, their hands touching mine, their voices joining my chant. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we hold the light, we guard the throne. We walked into the valley, our steps light, our hearts heavy but full. The vial was empty now, its light given to the earth, to the future, to the gods, but I felt it still, a pulse in my blood, a glow in my soul, a truth that would never fade. Mira carried Lear, her eyes bright with a mother's hope, her voice soft as she sang to him, promising him a world where the sea was gentle, where the stars were kind. Syria leaned on Calin, her breath steady, her hands tracing the air as if she wove the stories we would tell. Calin walked tall, his knife at his belt, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he saw the path we would take, the world we would build. The sun climbed higher, its light warm, its glow a mirror of the vials, of the crystals, of Atlantis's. I looked back, the groves fading into the hills, their trees a memory, their light a promise. I thought of Arion, of Tauren, of Kalis, of all who had been lost, and I sang for them, my voice a tide that carried their names, their dreams, their love. The survivors sang with me, their voices rising, filling the valley, filling the sky, filling the ages. We were Atlantis, not in the city that had fallen, but in the light we carried, in the stories we told, in the truth we kept. The world was vast, and we were small, but we were enough. A flame that would burn through time, through shadow, through silence. We found a place to rest, a grove of young trees, their leaves green and soft, their roots shallow but strong. I knelt, my hands touching the earth, my heart touching the stars. I told the survivors of Atlantis, of its spires, its songs, its dreams. I told them of the crystal, of the gods, of the light that had saved us, that would save us still. Lear listened, his eyes wide, his small hands tracing the air, as if he saw the city we had lost, as if he would carry it with him. Mara smiled, her tears falling, her love a shield. Syria and Calin sat close, their hands clasped, their eyes bright with the future, with the stories they would tell, with the light they would keep. The day faded, the stars emerging, their glow a mirror of the light we carried, of the truth we held. I stood, the cloak of starlight threads shimmering, my heart full, my spirit eternal. I looked to the survivors, to the valley, to the world beyond, and I knew our task was done, our purpose fulfilled. Atlantis was gone, but it was not lost. Not while we sang, not while we remembered, not while we loved. I raised my hands, my voice a whisper, a prayer, a promise, and spoke the final chant, the final truth, the final light. By fire and tide, by star and stone, we are the light. We are the throne. The valley answered. The stars sang, and Atlantis lived, forever in our hearts, forever in our songs, forever in the light. And so, the civilization of Atlantis vanished overnight, but its soul endures. A whispered memory turned into truth.